Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Lama Kathy. Welcome to Santa Monica KTC. We're very happy to have you joining us tonight. And we are, so we have sent out a newsletter, and on that newsletter is a link that you can make a donation to Lama Kathy if you choose to do so. And we also have information on our new website. Please check it out with membership options, different membership options to be part of our Sangha. So check that out too. And if anyone has any questions at all, of course, you can email us directly and we'll be happy to answer your questions. And right now I will hand it over to Lama Kathy. Will everybody please put their mics on mute? And here we go. Thank you, Lama K.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, everybody. It's really good to be with you this evening. And I know everybody in my part of the world is wishing they were in California right now, because I bet you have better weather. But in any case, I'm here to continue our discussion of Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche's Joyful Wisdom book. And the book he's talking about the Four Noble Truths and how the Four Noble Truths taught by the Buddha 2,500 years ago are still applicable to our everyday life. I remember my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, when he first started teaching in the US, people would ask him, well, Buddhism is really old. How can that possibly be relevant to us today in the lives that we're living now, right? How could this possibly be relevant? But he said, look, the Dharma is like water. Water has always quenched the thirst of human beings from beginningless time. So he said, so it is that the truth of the Buddha Shakyamuni continues to nourish us even after all of this time. So I'm really happy to be able to share these teachings with you. We've come up to chapter 4, where he spent the first couple of chapters talking about the first two noble truths, the truth of suffering, that suffering's part of life, and the second noble truth, which is the cause of suffering, that grasping and fixation and clinging all serve to confuse us and keep us involved in our stories and keep us involved in trying to acquire experiences and things and people and all kinds of things from the outside that we think are going to make us happy, but which really just continue to make us miserable as we grasp and cling and enter into our stories about them. And so the Buddha offered what you might call a radical approach, which was to recognize the things that cause suffering and to at first distance ourselves from those things, but eventually to transform those things into a path of awakening. And so Mingyur Rinpoche has been talking about the first two of the Noble Truths, the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering. And now he's going to start talking about the truth of the cessation of suffering. And so I think I'd like to start with just a short prayer. I like to begin my Dharma talks with a short taking of refuge and engendering of bodhisattva motivation, so we can remember why we're here. So we'll begin with a short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, his teaching, and the community, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may we all attain Buddhahood for the sake of all that lives. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they have that great happiness which is freedom from suffering. May they dwell in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. And now I'll recite a short prayer in Tibetan to the lamas of the lineage, asking for their blessing as we meet tonight to discuss the Dharma. O Paldens Hawe Lama Rinpoche, Dagi Chiwar Pede Denshula, Kadrin Jembogoniche Sunte, Kusum Tuking Udrup Saldu So. Okay, thanks everyone. The fourth chapter, where he begins to talk about the third noble truth, begins with a quotation from the ninth Karmapa, the master of Mahamudra, who in his book on the definitive meaning, the ocean of definitive meaning, says, liberation occurs through recognizing just by that which you are bound. In other words, by recognizing what holds us back, we are able to be freed. And so Mingyur Rinpoche begins this chapter by telling a funny story about himself, that when he gives Dharma talks, he gets thirsty and he has to drink lots of water, which means he has to go to the bathroom. And so with this rather unusual and sort of uncomfortable anecdote, he talks about himself, saying that he would answer some questions, but then the need to get up and use the restroom was getting greater and greater and greater. And he finally says to the person who asks him, Rinpoche, what is the difference between pure awareness and conditioned awareness? He says, that's a very deep truth, and I will explain it after we take our break. So then he gets up and goes to the bathroom and comes back to resume his teaching. But he said that moment where he realized that actually he had the solution all the time. The solution was to get up and go to the bathroom. But that was always that relief of going to the bathroom was always a potential within him. And he said, now, this may not be the best Dharmic example of an enlightening experience. He said, but I can tell you that he said, the deep sense of relief I feel in that moment is a good analogy for the third noble truth. That relief was within me all the time. And so he said, as what you might call a basic condition, I just didn't recognize it because it was temporarily obscured by all that water. But afterwards, he said, I was able to recognize it and appreciate it. And so he said, the Buddha used a better analogy, which was the sun behind the clouds. The sun is behind the clouds, and you can kind of get an idea of its light, but you can't see it completely because it's hiding behind the clouds. And he compared the basic nature of mind, which now we call the Buddha nature. He compared it to the sun behind the clouds. And he said, we can only really see the clouds because the sun is illuminating them. So he said, in the same way, he said, our basic nature is always present within us. It is an insight that is best understood by returning to that question that he had to answer before he left to go to the restroom, which was awareness. How do we cultivate awareness? And cultivating awareness, he says, is key to recognizing our Buddha nature. And so then he begins the next section by quoting from Pengur Jampo Zampo, who wrote the Mahamudra lineage supplication that we recite every time we do the long Chenrezig sadhana. Do you remember in he said, there's one verse that begins, the undistractedness is the body of meditation. Whatever arises is fresh, the nature of thought. Well, that's the quotation that Mingyur Rinpoche puts in the book here. He gives a different translation, though. The essence of every thought that arises is pristine awareness. Pristine awareness. And then he goes on to describe these two kinds of awareness, a pure awareness and conditioned awareness. And he says, really, both of them are this, in a way, he said they are both awareness. There is no difference in a way between them. In that, he said they are both awareness, which might be roughly defined as a capacity. Here's the quotation: a capacity to recognize, register, and in a sense, catalog every moment of our experience. Register, recognize, register, and catalog every moment of our experience. In other words, we are aware of everything. We're aware of the light in the room. We're aware of the feeling we have sitting on the floor or in our chair. We're aware of our memories. We're aware of our perceptions. We are aware of all of these things. And he says that this is the basic nature of mind, this awareness. And so then he describes the two types of awareness. He says, pure awareness is like a ball of clear crystal. It's colorless in itself, but capable of reflecting everything and anything: your face, other people, the walls, the furniture. If you moved it around a little, maybe you'd see different parts of the room. If you took it outside, you'd see the birds, the flowers, and even the sky. He said, but what appears in the crystal are just reflections. Those appearances are not really inside the crystal ball, nor do they alter its essence in any way. If you wanted to use the example of a mirror, think about a mirror. Something is reflected in the mirror, but that thing is not actually contained in the glass. It just appears there. And what appears in the mirror does not change the mirror in any material way. And so like that, everything that appears to us is seen and experienced by this awareness, which is itself not changed by it, because these things appear in the mind. You may have remembered when I was teaching on the Great Path of Awakening, and we studied that exercise on ultimate bodhicitta, where we talked about awareness. We talked about seeing the tree outside the window and knowing that the tree is not actually is appearing in our mind, but it's not actually in our mind. There is a difference between the apparent object, which is the tree, and the appearance of the tree that appears in our mind. So Mingyur Rinpoche starts by talking about the mind as a reflector of everything that we experience. Then he said, suppose that this crystal ball was covered with red silk, a piece of colored red silk. Everything that you saw reflected in it, no matter where you had it, would be shaded by some degree by the color of the silk. And he said, this is conditioned awareness, a perspective obscured by ignorance, desire, aversion, and a whole host of other mental obscurations that are born from grasping. And so he uses the Tibetan word dzimpa, which can be spelled in English letters D-Z-I-N-P-A, dzimpa, grasping. And he says, yet these colored reflections are also simply reflections. They don't alter the nature of what reflects them. The crystal ball is still colorless. And so he says, similarly, pure awareness in itself is always clear, always able to reflect everything, even misconceptions about itself as being limited or conditioned. In other words, the conditioning also of this, our conditioning can even reflect the fact that it's conditioned. I mean, this awareness can, this pure awareness can even reflect that it's being covered up. In other words, we can be aware not just of awareness itself, but of our confusion. We can be aware of our confusion. We can be aware of our grasping. We can be aware of the stories we are telling ourselves about what's happening. We can be aware of all of these things. So, in other words, our pure awareness is covered by our confusion. And it can also, this confusion can actually be dispelled by returning to pure awareness. And so he says, just as the sun illuminates the clouds that obscure it, pure awareness enables us to experience natural suffering and the relentless drama of self-created suffering, the me versus you, the mine versus yours, this feeling versus that feeling, good versus bad, and so on. He says the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, is often described as a final release from craving. However, he said, the term cessation seems to imply something different or better than our present experience. However, it's just a matter of acknowledging the potential already inherent within us. And then he says, cessation or relief from dukkha or suffering is possible because our awareness is fundamentally pure and clear and unconditioned. The covering, this confusion, fear, shame, guilt, greed, competitiveness, and so on are simply veils, perspectives inherited and reinforced by our cultures, our families, and our personal experience. Suffering recedes, according to the third noble truth, to the extent that we let go of the whole framework of grasping. He says we accomplish this not by suppressing our desires or trying to think differently, but rather by turning our awareness inward and examining our thoughts, our emotions, and the sensations that trouble us, and beginning to notice them as expressions of awareness itself. Simply put, the cause of various the various problems that we experience is the cure. The mind that grasps is the mind that sets us free. And so this is why all of the practices that we learn in Dharma are first about learning to see grasping as grasping, learning to see the story as a story, and learning how to disengage from all of the stories and rest the mind within itself. Look at the practice of shamatha, for example. When you're practicing shamatha or tranquility meditation, you're turning your attention inward. You're not looking at something outside yourself necessarily. You're turning your attention inward. Even if you use some type of outer object. I have this doily. Even if you're using some type of outer object as your object of awareness in meditation, what you're really being aware of is the attention you're placing on that object. You're trying not to lose track of the object, placing your attention there. So in a way, your attention itself is the object. So whether you're using your breath as the object of your practice of meditation, or you're using an imaginary object or a material object as the anchor for your attention, you place your attention on it. And then when your attention wanders into a story, into the past or into the future, you notice you can even label it thinking, let it go, and return your attention to the breath or your object. And in so doing, you're returning your attention to yourself, to the process of perception, to the process of this. And all of the different practices have to do with beginning, because he says it here, it's not suppressing, it's actually seeing through the process of grasping. He says, you're not trying to suppress your desires, or you're not trying to think differently about them, but rather turning your awareness inward and examining them and beginning to notice them as expressions of the basic mind itself. It's not that your misery is an expression of basic mind, but it is an experience in your mind that if you let go of it, it disappears and tells you something about the basic nature of mind that's beneath all of these thoughts. The nature is the same always, no matter what story you're telling yourself, no matter where you are in the past, in the future, in the now. The chatter, when you let it go, it falls apart all by itself, and you're left with mind's natural awareness. And you'll see this happen when you are doing a mantra meditation, as an example, because as you've been learning from your mantra class, at the end of the dissolution of the visualization you have, because you're learning Chenrezig practice, and part of that practice is visualizing yourself as the Bodhisattva Chenrezig. As part of that practice, you dissolve the visualization of yourself into emptiness and let your mind rest without an object for just 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And in those few seconds, you're experiencing this awareness as it naturally arises. And so with these short meditations, like this dissolution phase, or the ultimate bodhicitta exercises we did when we were looking for the mind's color, the mind's shape, the mind's location, the mind's beginning and end. When we were studying Great Path of Awakening, we practiced these, and what we were left with was basic awareness. And there's another exercise that you may have learned from Lama Karma Drodol. He was in Columbus last year, and he taught us his wake-up exercise. He may have taught that to you as well. He said you wake up in the morning, and before you even get out of bed, you can do your very first meditation of the day. He said, take a deep breath, and then let that breath out, and make sure you completely empty your lungs. And then take a second breath in, and then make sure you let it out completely. And then take a third breath in and let it out completely. And he said, just let your mind rest and try to see all of your thoughts that arise as expressions of mind's basic nature, its basic wisdom. And it's a lovely exercise. And, all of these different exercises allow us to spend just a few moments at a time with our basic mind. And by doing this, we begin to see what is beneath all the chatter, chatter, chatter. So I'm going to stop here and see if people have questions about this first part. The question of the third noble truth being that the relinquishment or the cessation of suffering comes from seeing the process of grasping as being the cause of suffering, and then finding a way to relinquish that grasping, not by trying to force yourself to have a different attitude, but by just letting the thoughts go and being with your basic awareness, which is beneath all of your thoughts and stories. So, questions? Comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Isn't any experience of awareness that we have necessarily dualistic?
Is any experience of awareness necessarily dualistic?
Mhm.
I'm thinking I understand what you mean, but could you give me an example?
Well, because in any point at which I think I'm resting and just aware, I'm aware that it's me resting in awareness. So it's me in awareness.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And this is, I thought I've got my books. That's very interesting. I wanted to read to you from one of my books, and I have no idea where I put them. So I'm going to go off camera for just a second so I can grab a book, okay?
Sure.
Stand by. I'll read it to you because it explains. Okay. The answer is sort of. Until the moment of Buddhahood, there's still going to be a sense of dualism. But what we do with these experiences, what we do, the dissolution, for example, in a mantra meditation, or the dissolution in a guru yoga, where the guru dissolves into you and that you think your mind and the guru's mind have mixed inseparably. Or when you do this reductive meditation that's taught in the Great Path of Awakening, where you look at mind and you determine momentarily there is no color, there is no shape. You have brief moments, just really brief moments what's the right word to say for that? Brief moments of non-conceptuality. And those moments of non-conceptuality are genuine. It's genuine meditation. But it's still somewhat conceptual, but you have moments. For example, here's what Jamgon Khantrul says in his description of the slogan, "Rest in the nature of all, the basis of everything." He says, when there's no involvement with the activity of the 7 groups of consciousness, meaning the 5 senses, thoughts, even the sense of me meditating, when you are not involved like that, he says there's still the nature of all phenomena, the natural state, which is this awareness that Mingyur Rinpoche talks about. It is pointed out by the term noble Buddha nature, which he's going to explain in the next section of this chapter. Then he says, let go and rest without the slightest idea of a nature existing as something, which means that he's trying to say that it is, it's non-dual in that moment, without a sense of duality, that you are not looking at something. Without the slightest idea of nature existing as something. So there's no duality there. With absolutely no mental clinging, meaning you're not putting effort into it.
Mhm.
In a state distinguished by non-discursive clarity, because
Mhm.
discursive, like chatter, 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 that's discursive. So it's non-discursive clarity and pure simplicity. You're not subtracting something from your mind. You're not adding something to your mind. You are basically just in a non-conceptual state regarding your awareness.
Mhm.
And yes, there will be moments when you have to return your attention, because this is still something we're developing. So I call these training states.
Mhm.
We're training our mind to not grasp,
Mhm.
training our mind to, and so we need words to go beyond words, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And that's why I find this description exceptionally helpful. So you can read this to yourself from time to time. And then he says, in summary, for as long as you are able, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, follow no train of thought, but rest evenly in a state in which mind in itself is clear and free of discursiveness.
Mhm.
So what some of the meditation teachers do with this is that they encourage you to do this for a short period of time. And then when you become discursive, you suspend that moment of meditation. And Situ Rinpoche even has you dedicate your merit and then rest for a moment and do nothing. And then he actually has his Mahamudra students start mini sessions of meditation with a refuge prayer and the 4 immeasurables, as we did here.
Mhm.
And then you apply your technique, whatever that technique is, looking at the mind, asking the questions, whatever that is. And then you let your mind rest naturally at the end of that. And then when that ends naturally, then you dedicate the merit and then rest again. Situ Rinpoche said, you've just dedicated your merit. Just let your mind rest and don't try to do anything. Just don't even try to meditate. Just let your mind rest. Do nothing. And he said, and what you might find, he said, is that those moments of doing nothing at the end are really good meditation, even if it's only a few seconds, because you have sort of discharged your responsibility, you know what I mean? And you stop like trying to do something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this is why all of the language in that slogan description has to do with withdrawing from effort. Without the slightest idea of a nature existing as something to be seen,
Mhm.
absolutely no mental clinging, like don't try to make something happen,
Mhm.
And if we look at Tilopa's basic instructions for meditation, they can be quoted as four lines or 6. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche chose 4 because I think it was less to remember. And he said, don't prolong the past, meaning don't think about the past.
Mhm.
Don't invite the future, which means don't think about what's going to happen next.
Mhm.
And then he said, and don't analyze the present.
Mhm.
And so he says, instead, rather rest in the present moment of mind's natural awareness. And then Rinpoche said, you do that for as long as it naturally lasts, then you begin again. So he also favored short, if you would have, let's say you would have a 20-minute or 30-minute meditation, he would have you apply your, do your refuge prayer and apply yourself and then let up, and then apply yourself and let up, and do that to the end. But Situ Rinpoche makes them, discrete, refuge and dedication, and then rest, refuge, dedication, and so forth. Refuge, the practice that, and so forth. So Rinpoche didn't insert as much prayer as Situ Rinpoche did, and which he defended. Situ Rinpoche defended it because some people said, that's a lot of praying for very little meditating. And he said, look, we need a lot of merit. We need to cultivate a virtuous mind state. So he basically was saying, kind of like, don't complain. Just do the prayers. They're good for you, like vitamins. But I don't know if this answered your question, or did it help?
It helps because I mean, one of the reasons for asking is when I experience this, then I'm left, with a question, I'm here. Is there something I should do? So that kind of answered that question as well.
And yeah, look at the guy who wants to know. Rinpoche said that one time. He said, well, what am I supposed to do? Like if somebody said, well, how am I supposed to do this? He said, look at the person who thinks they don't know what they're doing. And there's nobody there. It becomes a bit reductive and it sounds a little silly, but he's basically, because your mind takes the shape of your thoughts and your perceptions. Whatever you are paying attention to, your mind takes that shape. And you can abstain from that. You can just abstain from that fixation and just be with the mind, but only for short periods, because we're not used to that. We're used to there being some kind of point,
right.
some kind of goal that we can quantify, and then think that we're quote unquote making progress, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I should be doing something. I sat down to do this, etc.
Right.
So,
but the whole idea of when it's just like Jangden Control, the Great says in here, when there's no involvement with the activity of the 7 groups of consciousness, when you're not involved with the senses, you're not involved with your thoughts, and you're not even involved with the idea of me. That's the 7th consciousness. Your mind doesn't like go out like a flame. It's still there. And it is behind everything. The idea of water and waves is often used in Buddhism as an example. Your mind is like the ocean, and the thoughts, feelings, concepts, and emotions and so forth are like the waves. They're not separate. The waves can take the shape of something ugly, but it can also take the shape of something beautiful. But it's still just water.
Okay.
Yeah, so you might try just a very short set of period where you just look at the mind, and see what your experience is. And if you need some type of practice to do, you might go back and look at the regard all phenomena as dreams sequence, the sequence of exercises in Great Path. If you don't remember them, let me know and I'll clue you in.
I have the book.
Okay, great.
So.
Give them a try and then see, but make sure you write and let me know how it goes.
Okay.
Because I got real confused when I tried to practice this, and Rinpoche set me straight.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Oh, no, I appreciate you asking. Other questions? We got some time. Okay. That's all right. We don't have to do questions. We've got another like 15 minutes, so we'll just dive back into the book.
I have a question. Can
Yes.
you repeat the breathing exercise? I know it's 3
Yes.
breaths.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lama Karma Drodel, when he was teaching this, he said, you wake up in the morning and he says, and don't even have, he says, if you have to go wash your face or whatever first, do that. But he said, you can just sit up in bed. And he said, you can think about taking refuge. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and so forth. And he said, but you can start with 3 deep breaths. You breathe in, and then you breathe out. And he said, when you breathe out, he said, think that you're pushing out all of the air, you're pushing it all out so that your lungs are empty. Then you breathe in a second time. And then you breathe out, making sure you push out the air. And then you breathe in a third time. And then you breathe out. And then after you do that, he said, you just let your mind go. He said, and just watch your mind for just a minute or two. Not an hour, not, just a minute or two. And he said, and try to experience that all of your thoughts arise from and disappear back into emptiness. That's pretty cool,
And
right?
That's very cool. And we're breathing in and out through the nose, yes?
I think so. I do believe he said that.
Thank you.
But if you're congested, what are you going to do, right?
Use my nose drops first.
There you go. Good thinking. Good thinking.
I've been watching, I've been attending these like functional medicine health summits. And there's a guy who's all about breathing. And he says if you do 3 breaths, doing a deep inhale or just a fast inhale, and then taking 1 more sniff of air and exhaling it quickly. If you do that several times, it clears your mind and gets rid of anxiety.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it's another take on the theme.
Right. I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Breathing's important.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's right. That's right. Because, it's something we all have to do, and it can get really tied up in all of our, and stress and all of that. And so letting it go is a good thing, is a good practice.
Yes, we forget to breathe when we're anxious.
That's right. I hear that. Well, is there anything else that somebody else would like to say before I go back to the book?
I just had a quick question.
Yes.
Can you, when you were talking to that other man, you mentioned something about when you're working on this process of letting things go and whatever, you said, don't prolong the past, something about the future, and then not analyzing the present. Could you say that again?
Sure. Oh, sure. Yeah. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said that he quoted the ancient meditation master Tilopa, who was describing how to do quiet sitting meditation. Hey, by the way, we're getting some feedback. Is everybody muted? Let's see. If not, I'll run through and mute some folks. Let me see if.
Oh, it's me.
I'm not kind of go.
I'm not muted
because I'm hearing some sound. Oh, yeah. Well, you're asking the question, so that's good. Okay. So
Okay.
I'm going to mute you briefly. You may have some sounds in your house that are coming across. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so I'll leave you unmuted. Let's see what happens. And so Tilopa said, don't prolong the past when you're doing your meditation, meaning don't think about the past. Then he said, don't invite the future, which means don't think about the future. Then he said, don't analyze the present, meaning you don't sit there and analyze your current thinking. So if you're not prolonging the past and you're not inviting the future and you're not analyzing the present, all that's left is the fourth instruction, which is rest in the present moment of your mind's natural awareness. Does that give you the full quotation?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And and this is why I think it's and then Khenpo Rinpoche said after that, he said, this is the basic instruction. He said, but let's face it. He said, there are some days when our minds are so busy, it's hard to do that basic instruction. So he said, that's why you have another method. You keep another method handy so that you can use that method if this resting is not possible for you at that time. That's why if it's not working for you, don't worry. You can fall back on any of the methods of meditation you already know, such as breath awareness, breath coming in, breath coming out, breath coming in, breath coming out, and so forth. You can use those methods, and that will help you train your attention. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Okay. So then we have a few more minutes. I'd like to say something about the next topic, which is Buddha nature. And so he said, in order to explain the role of awareness to our mind, the role of awareness in our mind training and our meditation, he says, I have to cheat a little bit. That's what Mingyur Rinpoche says, and talk about something that the Buddha did not explicitly mention when he gave the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. But he said, as a number of my teachers have admitted, the subject is implied in the first and second turnings of the Wheel of Dharma. He said it's not as though the Buddha is holding back some revelation, but that he's emphasizing the basics first. And then he said the subject that is called Buddha nature, which doesn't refer to behavior or an attitude. Buddha basically is a Sanskrit term that can be translated as one who is awake. As a formal title, it usually refers to Siddhartha Gautama, the young man who achieved enlightenment 2,500 years ago in Bodh Gaya. But Sanjay, the word Sanjay in Tibetan, Sanjay is the word for Buddha in Tibetan language. And it refers to the mind of the Buddha as being completely purified, that's Sang, and completely ripened, which the qualities are completely ripened, which is the J, Sanjay. And he says here, our Buddha nature can't really be described in terms of relative concepts. I mean, we know because we just read this quotation from from Jamgon Khantrul, where he said, he said it is, he said it's when your mind's not involved in concepts, it's nonetheless aware, and that awareness is your Buddha nature. And he says here, he said, although Buddha nature defies description, the Buddha did provide some clues in the way of signposts that can direct us toward that supremely inexpressible experience. He said one of the ways that this boundless, that this can be described is in terms of three qualities. Boundless wisdom. So that's the first of the qualities of Buddha nature, boundless wisdom, which he said is the capacity to know everything and anything. The second quality of Buddha nature is infinite capability. The first quality, again, is boundless wisdom. The second quality is infinite capability, which is refers to an unlimited power to, he says, to raise ourselves and other beings from any condition of suffering. And the third is immeasurable loving kindness. Boundless wisdom, infinite capability, and immeasurable loving kindness and compassion. And then he talks about the Buddha really enjoying answering questions about his teachings to anyone. He said, in his teachings on Buddha nature, he presented his listeners with a kind of thought experiment, inviting them to discover within their own experience the ways in which aspects of Buddha nature emerge from time to time in our daily lives. He presented this experiment in terms of an analogy of a house in which a lamp has been lit and the shades have been drawn. The house represents the seemingly solid perspective of the physical, mental, and emotional conditioning we have, and the lamp represents our Buddha nature. He said, no matter how tightly drawn the shades or shutters are, inevitably a little bit of light from the house gets out. Then he says, just like that light, he said, the light of our wisdom can appear first as an intuition, a sense that he says, a gut level feeling about a person or a situation or an event. He said, this light of Buddha nature, this light of wisdom can arise as a type of intuitive feel. I mean, for many people, they say that they have a sense that there's more to their mind than their thoughts. And they have a sense that there's more to their personality than just the things they say and do. They say that there's more, I get the feeling there's more to me than all these things. And that's their inner wisdom talking. And then their inner loving kindness shines through in those moments when we are spontaneously kind to someone, or just reflexively giving towards someone. Because this love and compassion that we feel, it disengages our grasping, our dzimpa. It disengages our grasping for just a moment. And then the third quality, capability, because he's already talked about the wisdom aspect appearing first as intuition, the loving kindness, this reflexive quality of generosity and caring. And then this third capability, he describes at length by talking about people who had misfortunes happened to them, and yet they were not destroyed by these misfortunes, but rather recognized that even in misfortune, there were still choices and decisions and actions that they could take to cope with the misfortune. And so he said this, he explained a person who lost all of his money in the stock market and then began to reinvest in the stock market, even though he had been burned by it. He started to reinvest and restored some of his fortune. And he said, it's because I realized that the stock market gave me the money and it took it away and it could give it back again. And therefore, he was not caught with the story of, I am ruined. He mostly thought, well, but there's still decisions I can take and things I can do in spite of all of this. And he said, I've heard similar remarks from people, Rinpoche said, who are coping with chronic illness or either with themselves, their parents, or their children. And he said that he described this woman whose father was suffering from, this man, excuse me, whose father was suffering from Alzheimer's, and he was caregiving. He said, oh, of course, it's hard to balance all of these things, he said, but it's what I do. I don't see any other way. In other words, you can't go around it, you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you have to go through it. And my husband has a saying. He says, it's amazing what you can do when life does not give you a choice. When you don't have any choice, it's amazing what you can do. So what Mingyur Rinpoche is saying is that these three qualities of Buddha nature, wisdom, compassion and love, and capability, he said, we see flickers of them through our intuition, through our spontaneous moments of love and compassion and being moved by things. And then finally, through our attitude of courage, he used the word courage, to address the things that are happening to us in our lives. And so this is where I'll have to stop today, but we'll pick up here next time. And we're going to talk about even at the time of death, we can have the sense of the presence of these three qualities. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, so and then after that, he talks about Buddha moments, which I'm looking forward to hearing more about. So it's the bottom of the hour, but if anybody wants to stay for another 5 minutes, I can handle a question or two. What do you folks think?
What's the third thing?
Yes, the first thing is boundless wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is infinite capability. And the third thing is boundless love and compassion. So it's wisdom, capability, and boundless compassion. He remembered them, or he told stories about them in a different order, which is, I think, what confused me. I don't know if it confused you or not, but it confused me a bit.
What's his definition of capability?
You know what he's saying? He's saying that let me see how he put it the first time when he was going through it. By the way, if you're interested, if you have the paperback, this is explained on, hang on here, on page 88 of the book. He says, infinite capability, which consists of an unlimited power to raise ourselves and other beings out of any condition of suffering.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Beautiful definition.
Raise ourselves or anyone else out of that
Mhm.
suffering. And then the last one is this boundless compassion and love.
What's his definition of that?
He says it's a limited sense of relatedness to all beings and an open-heartedness toward others that serves as a motivation to create the conditions for all beings to flourish.
Beautiful.
Isn't that amazing?
It's
just,
amazing.
the language is, and you know what's really
Yes.
great? It's so easy to understand that because we've had moments of feeling like that. Moments, not
Mhm.
lots, but we've had moments. And what he's saying is that those little moments are of those little flickers of wisdom, in inner wisdom through intuition, love and compassion through spontaneous generosity, and this capability with that attitude of not diving into our story about how tragic or how wonderful something is, but rather making decisions and choices that help to
Mhm.
advance the situation, being creative and problem solving and so forth. I mean, wow, right?
Wow. Yes.
And he says these flickers just appear. And he said, we discount them sometimes. I think we do. I think we don't pay attention to the sort of wealth that we have and that show that this wealth that shows itself in these flickers.
Well,
And
because we're not self-conscious when we're in that place.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
not necessarily observing ourselves. We're just letting the intuition flow. What's the definition of the first thing? We may as well hear all three.
Oh, the boundless wisdom.
Yes.
He's saying that it shows up as an intuition, what some people describe as a gut level feeling about a person, about a situation, or about an event, where you just get a sense of something. And what I described was that some people come to the Dharma Center and they want to learn meditation because they have this felt sense that there's more to themselves. There's more to themselves than just the chatter, 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 that there's something deep within them that needs to be nurtured. There's some basic goodness in them, and they want to find that. So I feel like everybody experiences these things differently, but that's what he's saying. So
beautifully put. Thank you so much,
you're welcome,
Kathy, for sharing that.
No, it's great. Because of time, we have to stop. Does anybody have any last things? Anybody else like to share?
I think Daniel Lama K, he was gonna ask, Daniel, are you gonna ask Lama K about Tashi Gomang Stupa when we go out there? Do you want to ask her?
Oh, sure.
Well, she needs to sign off, right?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. I mean, if you guys got a minute, I got a minute.
Okay. Let's see here. Any particular benefits of attending the consecration of Khenpo Kartar's stupa? It's like, we'd like to know a little bit about
Sure.
intention, our motivation. And I was thinking of bringing the invoking the compassionate one, that prayer to Trungpa Rinpoche, but that prayer could be used for Khenpo Kartar as well, or is there a prayer we should bring with us?
I hear you. Okay. Here's kind of my thinking. I could do a whole talk on just this. I just have to tell you, but since you're leaving next week, we'll try to condense it. Okay, condense it, right? Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said when we were going on our stupa pilgrimage to the Southwest,
Yes.
we did 3 of them. I believe it was 2012, 13, and 14. It was something like that. We did 3 of them in a row. And he said, when you go to the stupa is a geometric representation of a sitting Buddha. But he said inside the stupa, he said, is our scriptures, mantras, and little stupas called satsas that also have scriptures inside them, and sometimes a little relic or something inside. Anyway, the stupa, he said, is going to the stupa is like going to meet the Buddha. He said, you should think that you are on a pilgrimage. You're going to meet the Buddha. And the Buddha dwells in the stupa, in that his body is represented by the exterior, his speech is the prayers inside it, and his mind is the relics that are inside it. And he said, when you go to a stupa, he said, you should make offerings, you should circumambulate. He said, and you should definitely make aspirations. And he said, the aspirations that you make, he said, can be about yourself. They can be about your Dharma center. You know, they can be like, I have a bad habit I want to correct. Please help me with this bad habit. Or please give me this quality I feel like I lack. Maybe I feel like I lack wisdom, or maybe I feel like I lack compassion. Please give me that. And you basically just express your aspirations. Like, oh, I want to do a long retreat, or I want to be able to practice Mahamudra well, or whatever, or I want to be better to my family, or whatever you have aspire to. He said, bring that aspiration and make that aspiration. And he said, if you have a lot of time, he said, you can recite any of the 5 main aspiration prayers that are done in the Karma Kagyu lineage. And at KTD, at the bookstore at KTD, there is something called the Stupa Pilgrimage Prayer Book that a person can buy. And you can, and he said, recite these aspirations in English, he said, because he said, even though there's great blessing to reciting them in Tibetan, he said, you do need to know what you're aspiring to. So recite them in English if you can. And so that's the first thing. Going to the stupa is like going to meet the Buddha. And when there's a consecration event happening, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are being asked to come to and dwell within the stupa. And the stupas, all of the items in the stupa have already been consecrated in special ceremonies before they're even put in. And then they're consecrated as a totality. First, the ingredients are blessed, then the ingredients are placed, then the Buddha is invited to dwell there. One of the men who built the large stupa at Crestone, when he was giving us a tour, he said, from his point of view, a stupa is like, he said, it's like a dynamo. Now, a dynamo in science is something that both gives off power and it creates power. Basically, you put power in and you get power out. And he said, so the stupa is like a spiritual dynamo. It has all of these blessings inside of it. And then you circumambulating it with your devotion and your prayerfulness, you charge it up and it charges you up. And he said, so I just felt like it was an amazing talk that he gave about this. And also, if you don't have the time to buy a big prayer book and recite bunches of prayers that are in a big prayer book, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche dictated a 1-page, yes, it's just 1 page. Well, it's a page and a half. Stupa pilgrimage format, prayer format. He dictated it to us, and we use it in Columbus at our little stupa that we have out in front. Just last week for the Chukor Duchen special holiday, we went there and put offerings around the outside of the, flowers. We put water bowls and then put flower petals in the water bowls and little electric candles and you name it. we had a little offering and prayer at our stupa. Now, I know you mentioned the Guru Yoga of Trungpa Rinpoche, and you might need to ask one of the lamas presiding what the right prayer to do would be. But what Lama Karma Drodul told us during the cremation of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche 4 years ago was, he said, the 6-line prayer that is in the Nundro Guru Yoga practice, the one that begins Lama Rinpoche La Sowa Deb.
Okay, I know it.
Yeah, that 6-line prayer is a great prayer to do, to pray for Khenpo Rinpoche's blessings
Great.
and for his swift return.
Okay.
I am sadly unable to go. I really wanted to go to the consecration, but I've been feeling a little tired lately, and my doctors want me to slow down just a little bit. So to kind of recoup my strength, I'm not sick per se, but I'm tired, a little more tired now. And so they want me to rest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit out the consecration, but I'm going to go to KTD for some of their programs in the fall. And I just really feel sad that I have to miss this, but immediately after this, we have to get ready for Vajra Master Lama Tobden to come to Columbus. And so I figured if I needed to save my strength, I better do it now, especially since I have a bad tendency toward altitude sickness. I really get sick at altitude. So if I'm feeling a little tired and I get altitude sickness, I best take care.
Yeah. Can you email me a copy of the
Yes.
prayer, the stupa prayer?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll pass it on to Jody and Charles.
Yeah.
Okay.
You also can find it on lamakathy.net.
Oh, okay.
I'll put it in chat
Yeah.
right now. It's much easier. Okay, here it comes. I've got to copy it first. Okay, let's see. And here's the chat. Okay, let's see if we can make that happen. All right, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. I've got it. Thank you.
Where is the consecration taking place, Lama Kathy?
It's going to be in Crestone, Colorado, at the Karma Thegsum Tashi Gomon Stupa. They created a stupa that is going to be consecrated and dedicated to Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, which is just lovely.
Wow.
How are you getting there, everybody? How are you going? Are you driving?
No, flying to Denver and then flying to Alamosa.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's the fastest, because Alamosa is maybe 30-45 minutes from Crestone, and that's what we did. We flew to Denver, and then we rented a bus for the 20 of us that were on the Stupa pilgrimage, and we had a ball. We went up to Red Feather Lakes and saw the big stupa dedicated to Trungpa Rinpoche, and then we went down to Crestone and saw all of the stupas in Crestone. There are like 5 or 6 now. And then we also went to Pagosa Springs and saw the one at Taramandala. So it was a wonderful trip.
Okay, thank you so much. I think please take us out with a dedication.
Okay. Yeah, we dedicate the merit from this session to all suffering beings and make the aspiration that the goodness that we've gathered here is dedicated to their freedom and liberation from the sufferings of samsara, their attainment of Buddhahood, and their emanation all over the universe to benefit sentient beings. I'll recite the short prayer. Through this merit, may all beings obtain the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings.
Okay. Charles, can you stay on for a few minutes after?